It's like, again, remember I said the most underrated player in the game? This is like the biggest, most provable secret that's out there. And it's unbelievably offensive when you really think about what this means. And as a joke, almost as a joke, I go apply to be a DJ at a strip club in Austin, Texas on Congress Avenue. It's not there anymore.
The voice just made more sense to me.
Tryout, I get the job. Couldn't believe I got the job. And it was really weird because he is on the SoSwap forum at the same time while I'm doing this. At the same time, Neil Strauss is writing the game. Like all three of these things are happening at the same time. Like we're getting into cell phones. Like 04, we start getting into text messaging. Like around this time period, there's this thing where people are consorting information on the internet. That's where like the manosphere and red pill, these kind of concepts come. And I'm working at the strip club, and this is the first time I'm being told something by my family, by Disney and the church, and then I'm watching women who are, objectively very attractive, and they're saying completely opposite things. Now, not to say that strippers at a strip club are identify all women, but like it was just extreme examples where I was watching domestic abuse, drug use, all this kind of stuff, women complaining about men, and then like just consider this, guys. Women get offered infinite dick and still chase each other's man. Like how crazy is that? When you watch that, infinite dick, and you still chase each other's man. And I was watching this at a strip club. I was like, it's like the six of you are fighting over the same worthless dude. And I was like, okay, and I'm 22 years old. I'm like, something's wrong here. Something's broken in the system. So it was like kind of the first, I guess maybe red pill moment for me. When I read the Rational Mail, I was like, thank God someone wrote this. Then I joined the military in 04. And from 04 to 11, I'm a captain in the U.S. Air Force. I fly KC-135 as a navigator. And then during that time, I start to see the difference between good leadership and bad leadership. I was like, okay, this is really interesting. Because also during that time, I get introduced to Mystery and Matador. I'm still friends with Mystery and Neil Strauss and those guys. And I'm watching this pickup thing kind of explode and get really big. And then granted, this is before Instagram. So I think pickup actually had some efficacy in that time period, but sort of died off once social media started, because now what happened was guys who had the Lamborghini and the nice watch and all this and the big mansion party, they got to dunk on the pickup artists because those guys weren't able to keep up. And so during that time period, I was like living in Atlanta, Georgia. I was stationed at Robins Air Force Base, and I would go out with these club promoters who had like the hottest girlfriends I've ever seen and would show up to a club with 70 girls. And then I would listen to pickup artists that like said that they were banging 10s and like they weren't. Like they just weren't. They objectively weren't. And then so that period of time goes on. I get out of the military in 11, and then I moved to Las Vegas. I was made up my mind. I'm just going to move here. And one thing leads to another. Like long story short, I end up working for this event company while I'm still working in finance. So I start coaching for free. RSD would have me go on stage, and different companies would have me come coach, but I was doing it totally for free while I was working in finance. I would throw these events in Las Vegas. So first it was a bikini competition, then it was another bikini competition. Now I host all the bikini competitions in Las Vegas. And I was hosting the Maxim party. I was a videographer at the Playboy Mansion. And I kind of figured out this interesting idea of networking in order to get hundreds of women to show up to like certain events. And it was funny because I lived in the same building with Dan Bilzerian, but I didn't know him. I lived in Tower 2 of Panorama Towers. He lived in Tower 1. And we never met while we both lived there. Okay. And Dan's one of my good friends now, but I didn't know. Nice. And it was like he was doing this thing I was slowly discovering. The term in psychology is called mate choice copying. And this is the concept where if a man is seen with other women or the approval from other women find that man attractive. Yeah. By the way, this is the same thing for two gender species, pretty much every mammal, several species of bird. Okay, there's even an experiment they've done with geese, where they put female geese next to the male one, and they're stuffed animals, and the females still choose that
suddenly
male.
More desirable.
Suddenly he's more desirable. So I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. Like, and then I'm still coaching guys, and I'm like, I can't make your eyes blue. I can't make you 6'3". I can't make you look like a male stripper, but I can make it look like you get approval from women, and that is going to be an incredible attraction trigger. And I was like, this is really interesting. And then I remembered all the lessons I learned from the military, and I would meet these guys that were in the pickup community, and I was like, they can't shake my hand. They have no ability to lead. I can't hear them when they talk. They had no ability to like really communicate or lead a group. So I remember that part. And then there was the guys in the self-help community, right? So I'm friends with Ty Lopez. I met a whole group, and that group, like they didn't know how to talk to women. So it's like, there's something missing here. There's a gap that's not being bridged here. I was like, what if it was like Jocko Willink or David Goggins taught a dating program? What if there was a pickup program taught by U.S. military officers? And it's just like, I kept thinking about this concept. Remember, I'm doing this all for free at this point. And then COVID hit.
And more time to think about it.
And I had more time to think about it, but I'm working in finance and I'm triple levered to the upside and I lose a ton of money. And I end up thinking, man, I should probably start doing this for a living. And one of my friends tells me, he goes, at this point, I've been coaching for 14 years, never made a penny off of it. And I was like, what if you did this? He's like, if people actually paid to learn from you, they would actually be more invested. And that's absolutely true, by the way. I'll tell you guys, you can give free advice to 100,000 people, but if somebody pays you a certain amount of money, the amount of work they're willing to put in once they give you the money is 100-fold. And the change in their life is 100-fold. I'm coaching, and then the weirdest thing happened, guys. If this has ever happened to you, it's really interesting. This girl I was dating just started lying about me to everyone. Cost me a job. He cost me a job, and I remember just being livid. I was like, I cannot believe, but I can't do anything about it. Like, I'm obviously, there's nothing I can really do to her, but I lost a job because of her. And it was like a side job. It's like a hosting gig. And I remember thinking, you remember the Joe Rogan thing where he says the N-word and they put all the clips together, and then all these black comedians come together. In context, you understood he was quoting Paul Mooney. Out of context, he looks like a racist.
He's a white guy saying.
Correct. Yeah. I remember thinking he has this incredible superpower of having a podcast. So like, you can't take him out of context, because he's going to talk for 3 hours. And if you listen to Joe Rogan in clips, he sounds sometimes kooky. If you listen for 3 hours, he's a really well thought out guy. Yeah. So I was like, man, maybe I should do this. And so I started the podcast because this girl was lying about me. It was crazy. First episode, I had an F-18 fighter pilot, who was a buddy of mine, and a playmate. And I had compared their lives together and using the concepts of evolutionary psychology. I forgot that other part. I'm obsessed with evolutionary psychology. Yeah. That's our main connection. Yeah. Ty Lopez introduced me to a professor named Dr. David Buss from University of Texas at Austin. I'm also a Longhorn like he is. Dr. Buss has been on my program. I have come to the realization that all psychology is an evolutionary psychology, and evolutionary psychology is the only testable model of psychology. Psychology is a soft science. Evolutionary psychology is a hard science. Yeah. And this is the concept of like, there are actual dimorphic differences between the male and female psychology amongst Homo sapiens. And those things have been developed through 178 million years of mammalian evolution, 3 million years of hominid evolution, and 200,000 years of Homo sapien evolution. And when I understood those concepts, and remember, been working at a strip club, throwing these events, going to these huge parties. Yeah. So it's one of these things where like, theoretically, Dr. Buss is talking about this stuff. And then I'm sitting here next to Dan Bilzerian, not a guy like Dan Bilzerian, like the dude who 1,500 women, Dan Bilzerian, like the Dan Bilzerian. Yeah. And I'm watching these women fight over him. And I'm reading these concepts about sexy son's hypothesis. And I was like, maybe what I could do is actually bridge the gap between theory and practice. Realistically do this. I read The Rational Male in 2013. I don't know what Rollo Tomassi looks like. I imagine in my mind what he looks like.
No one did.
No one knew what he looked like.
Great name, by the way.
I imagine in my mind, he's this character, obviously it's the character from, it's funny because he's the character from LA Confidential. Yeah. And then Owen Cook, Tyler Durden, is the character from Fight Club. Ironically, my real name is Michael Sartain. So I always remember this one time. I was like, I wonder what Rollo Tomassi, who I didn't know what looked like, would think if I took him. I'm friends with Crystal Hefner, Hugh Hefner's widow. Okay. I was like, what would he think if I introduced him to Crystal Hefner and took him to the Playboy Mansion? How would that fit in? Not to like show off or anything, but like how would that fit in what his belief about sexual dynamics and networking and all this kind of stuff is, and status hierarchies and all that kind of stuff. And I always thought, man, how crazy would that be? One of the craziest things about me having a podcast or me being in this field is like, some of my favorite authors are David Buss, Neil Strauss, and Rollo Tomassi, and I'm friends with all of them, which is really crazy to me, right? That's one of the best things. You talk about having a podcast, getting to meet these people that you admire so much, right? Yes. We get to the point where I'm hosting the podcast and I'm having all these different guests on, and I get a message. And by the way, I'm not trying to stun or anything. He was doing this for everywhere. Andrew Tate's people were reaching out to every podcast back in 2020, around that time, like early 2020. So I got a message from one of Andrew Tate's people. He connects us on Instagram, and me and Andrew start going back and forth. Well, he's looking at my social media, and in my social media, it's nothing but me with hundreds of girls. And he's like asking me questions, and we go back and forth, and I'm like, hey man, let's set up something. I want you to come do my podcast, blah, blah, blah. I have a lot of questions for you. I did a ton of research. And he's like, hey man, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it to the States, but you need to interview my buddy, Justin Waller. So I was like, okay, let me do that. Let me interview Justin Waller. And by the way, at this point, I don't even know if this is a real Andrew Tate I'm talking to. I'm texting every day. He starts leaving voice memos, so I know it's him. Justin Waller shows up. Me and Justin are good friends. I'm staying at Justin's place right now in Midtown. Afterwards, Justin goes to Reno, does a show with Rollo. And then it was just the weirdest thing because Rollo understood these concepts. And evolutionary psychology is the Pablo Bancaro of psychology. Like, you know who he is, but no one knows who Pablo Bancaro is, but he's awesome. Do you understand? You understand what I'm saying?
I don't know who he is.
He's the Mike Collins. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was awesome, but like low key awesome. Evolutionary psychology is like, so I studied physics in college. Physics is a testable model. Like, I can test concepts in physics. Johannes Kepler was able to look at the motions of planets, and then from those observations, Isaac Newton was able to derive the laws of motion and gravity. Basic psychology, like what Freud was doing, he was like snorting cocaine while he was talking to a 12-year-old boy like that, and he was just like, this seems like the phallic stage.
Sounds right.
He was like, that sounds right. And I'm not saying Freud was obviously a very smart guy, but my point was, it wasn't testable. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I can test the speed of light. It's 186,282 miles a second. But I can't, but there were concepts in psychology that nobody was willing to test until Dr. Buss started doing it. So it was sociobiology before like 1975. And then later on, they started calling it evolutionary psychology. And Dr. Buss does this mammoth study in 1989 with 37 different cultures. And in the study, what he does, it's in his book, The Evolution of Desire. In the study, when he goes through all these 37 different cultures, they have nothing in common with each other. There's no television, radio, film, nor billboards, no nothing. And what they find in all these cultures is that women prefer men who are taller. Women care more about access resources that men have than the opposite. Men care more about body count than women. Men are more interested in facial symmetry and signs of youth than women. Men care about a hip to waist ratio 0.72. Women prefer a male shoulder to waist ratio 1.65 to 1. It's like, how the is all this the same for the Yanomamo tribe in the Aztecs or in South America, and the same for the Aboriginals, people who live in Central Australia, and it's the same for the people who live in Norway and Mexico and Russia and China. How is that possible? And Vegas. How is that possible?
Don't forget Vegas.
If that's a cultural construct. Well, what does that prove? It proves it's not a cultural construct.
Yeah.
My necessity, my heterosexuality, or or all of our sexuality is not cultural. It's genetic. Uh-oh. Now what I'm saying is controversial. Do you understand? I'm told that men wanting to see attractive women is totally cultural. And what we should do is, like, for instance, body positivity. We're supposed to look at those overweight women in Victoria's Secret, and we're supposed to accept them and find them attractive. It's one thing for us to accept them. It's another thing for us to find them attractive. I don't find them attractive. But the reason why I don't find them attractive is supposedly because I belong to a patriarchy and because I'm a misogynist.
Social construction.
But it couldn't possibly be because of my genetics. But Dr. Buss proves that it is part of genetics. So now here's this thing. It's like, again, remember I said the most underrated player in the game? This is like the biggest, most provable secret that's out there. And it's unbelievably offensive when you really think about what this means. So I start making my entire podcast about evolutionary psychology, but I'm talking to porn stars, physicists, everyone. And every time I bring it back to these concepts, because again, I believe all psychology is a function of is a derivative of evolutionary psychology, or all psychology is an evolutionary psychology, like Dr. Buss said. That's what happens. So he and I start doing the show.
That's why we don't kick girls off the show.
Yeah. So we start doing the show, but here's the big difference, right? Of course, like, nobody's a bigger fan of Fresh and Fit clips than me. I love watching. It's crazy. I know half the girls that they have on the show, the hot ones. We do.
Ones that make it to Vegas.
So
Not the ones that don't measure.
Yeah,
You're gonna love Saucecast on Thursday.
We do a show. We do Access Vegas, and I'm like, man, I can get 4 or 5 playmates on here. Like, it's not going to be a problem. But I didn't want to do that. I started looking for girls who had master's degrees, girls who were married, and girls who had kids. Yeah. I was trying to find like a bit more of a test sample. And so we started doing that. So it would be if I had a stripper here, then I want a girl with a master's degree here, right? And so we started asking these questions because apparently there's good girls and bad girls, which I don't believe in. I believe we're all just a function of our psychology.
We've had two Miss Nevadas on.
Yeah, we've had 2 Miss Nevadas on the show. We almost had 3. Lauren York couldn't show up. But like, the point was, we started doing the show, but here's what makes it so different. These girls will cap, and Myron will be like, oh, you're capping. But you don't know. You don't know that she might be telling the truth. Not with me. I know every single one of them. I know every one of your ex-boyfriends. We had a girl come on the show. I'm not kidding. This girl's a real estate agent. She's a real estate agent, and she on Brazzers. Go look it up. Savannah Storm. She does both. She's sold $10 million worth of real estate. She comes on my show and she goes, I'm a sapiosexual. You know what sapiosexual is? She's like, I prefer men who are intelligent. I'm like, stop it, Savannah. Your last 2 boyfriends are a male stripper, and one of the best looking like model VIP hosts in the city. And you're telling me you're a sapiosexual? And she goes, you're right. You got me, Michael. And so that's what the show was different, is that I knew these girls. And in a couple of cases, or a few cases, especially near the beginning, I had dated several of them and I didn't tell anyone. So when the girls were sitting there, like, some of the girls would be like, how many of you guys have slept with a guy on a first date? And like some of the girls I know for a fact you've slept with a guy on the first date. They don't raise their hand. They don't raise their. So that was what made the show different and it's like so interesting to some people. And the other thing is we just smother the show with statistics. We try to use as many stats as possible.
Can't refute it.